And welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, free for all Friday, 888-589-8840. Number if you'd like to call, join the program, 888-589-8840. Now, we've been over this before about this sequester, and this is very clearly President Obama's idea. The idea for the sequester came from Barack Obama, and you even have some Democrats that have slipped up and have admitted it. President Obama is trying to put all of the pressure on the Republicans. This is their fault. They're the ones that are intransigent. This was their idea. It was Congress's sequester. And here's what this is clip number 3, where President Obama is trying to blame the lack of resolution for the sequestration crisis on the Republicans. And realize, as I mentioned yesterday, Yuval Levin, National Review Online, did a piece breaking down the numbers. And even with the sequester, the federal government will spend more money in 2013 than we spent in 2012, more than we spent last year. In fact, we will spend more money with the sequester. We will spend more money in 2013 than any other year in the history of the United States, except for 2011. So don't let anybody lie to you. You're going to hear the word draconian all over the place. This is an $85 billion a year. Actually, it's going to be about $29 billion but 29 to 40 billion when you get right down to what's actually going to come out of this year's budget. You know the Federal Reserve is printing $85 billion a month. The Federal Reserve is printing $85 billion a month. They're just running the printing press 24 hours a day, throwing this money that's not backed up by any assets. It's not backed up by any wealth. We're actually in recession right now as an economy. It's $85 billion. So $85 billion over the course of a year, when you've got Ben Bernanke cranking out monopoly money at $85 billion a month, it is chump change. It's a nothing burger. And we're still going to wind up spending more money this year than we did last year. But here is Jay Carney as the president's mouthpiece trying to lay the blame off on the GOP. Let's listen.
Did the White House or the administration make the Department of Defense wait or to release the specific cuts on the sequestration until the last 2 weeks? And it seems like we're just hearing about this, and General Odierno had said last week that they didn't prepare for it very well because they didn't think it was going to happen.
No, the answer to your question is no, and there's a process here underway. I think, I can't speak for General Odierno, but I think we're all hopeful and remain at least insistent that Republicans do not make the choice to allow sequestration to happen, that they choose instead to come up with a balanced plan or to agree to a balanced plan to postpone or eliminate the sequester. The fact is, broadly speaking, we've known what the impact of these dramatic across-the-board cuts would be. I can quote to you page after page of Republicans citing the harm to the Pentagon and our defense readiness that would come if sequester were to take effect.
So again, it's just bloviation. We're going to spend more in 2013 than we spent in 2012. They're talking about 800,000 layoffs in the Defense Department, 600,000 layoffs here, Head Start being shut down. And by the way, we went over this, but Head Start is an absolute total failure as a federal program. They spent $180 billion on Head Start, and it has shown absolutely no lasting effects. Kids in the 3rd grade, you cannot tell the difference between a kid in the 3rd grade that's been to Head Start and a kid that has not. In fact, they've actually some evidence that Head Start actually hurts kids when it comes to math skills. So Head Start been an absolute dismal failure. If the purpose is to give kids a jump start on their education, it's not working. Maybe it's provided daycare and stuff like that for parents that need it and benefit from it. But in terms of an educational benefit, it's a zero. So when they talk about that being taken away, it's not even going to happen, but it's a bogus sort of scare tactic. And yet this is the one that the Democrats continue to use. And Jay Carney's out there saying it's got to be a balanced approach. Anytime you hear the Democrats use the word balanced approach, that's just a code word for tax increases. And the Republicans said very clearly, we are happy to come and deal with a sequestration. We are not going to raise taxes anymore. We just raised them $600 billion. We are not going to raise any more tax increases. So what that means is the one that's holding up the train here is Barack Obama. He's the one that's intransigent. He is stubborn. He's dug in. It's got to involve tax increases. Republicans said, we just gave you $600 billion in tax increases, $620 billion. We're not going to raise any more taxes. And, that's why I say, look, you can't ever give in to these people. You can't ever do it because it's never enough with them, never enough with them. And, the Republicans just gave him $620 billion in tax increases. It's like it never even happened. Now, here is Chuck Todd repeating this kind of mindless, clip 4, this mindless kind of mantra coming out of the Democrats. Let's listen.
So Republicans, they spent the day yesterday passing around this video of a Montana Democratic senator, Max Baucus, by the way, who's up for re-election in 2014, who was saying this about the sequester.
The president's part of this sequester. The White House recommended it, frankly, back in August 2011. And so now we're feeling the effects of it.
Of all the dumb things Washington does, this who started it argument is proving to be one of the dumber ones, especially since we're so close to the actual cuts going into place.
So he plays the clip of Max Baucus saying that the president has a part of the sequester. The White House recommended it. This is the White House's idea. And Chuck Todd's out there trying to say this is dumb that the GOP is arguing that Obama's responsible for the sequester when Max Baucus, who's a Democrat, saying that exact same thing. Now, I want to drop down. We got a couple of why don't we grab clip 14 if we can, Rob? This is where Bill Press, who's a winger left radio guy, learns that this whole sequester mess is actually President Obama's idea. Let's listen.
So, Nancy, where did the sequester come from? Whose idea was it? Was it really President Obama's idea, as the Republicans claim?
Sure.
What are the facts?
Well, if you read, so Bob Woodward's book about the Budget Control Act and the debt ceiling negotiations in the summer of 2011 is sort of the best account that we have so far of how this came to be. And according to that book, the sequester was originally the idea of the White House's.
So Bill Press, uber left, learns from Bob Woodward that, yep, the sequester was, in fact, President Obama's idea. Let's grab clip 16 if we can, Rob. This is the Rand Paul clip. And Rand Paul is the one guy that's really speaking some sense into this whole mess because he understands what I just explained to you, that this is a complete nothing burger. Now, Rand Paul turned in $600,000 yesterday to the U.S. Treasury. He was allotted to him for office expenses. He didn't spend it. He turned it back into the U.S. Treasury. Big, giant check for $600,000. Rand Paul returning it to the taxpayers. Didn't need it. We cut corners. We were frugal. Here's $600,000 to go back to the taxpayers. But Rand Paul understands that this sequestration thing is an absolute nothing burger. Let's listen.
For goodness sakes, it was his proposal. He proposed the sequester. It was his idea. He signed it into law, and now he's going to tell us that, it's all our fault. I voted against the sequester because I didn't think it was enough. The sequester cuts the rate of growth of spending, but the sequester doesn't even really begin to cut spending, which we have to do, or we're going to get a credit downgrade, another credit downgrade.
So you don't think that the $85 billion this year, that would be the forced cuts this year, that from your perspective, that's not enough?
It's a pittance. I mean, it's a slowdown in the rate of growth. There are no real cuts happening over 10 years. Over 10 years, the budget will still grow $7 to $8 trillion. He added $6 trillion to the debt in his first term. He's on course to add another $4 to $6 trillion in his second term.
So this is just really nibbling at the edges is the point that Rand Paul is making. Well, let's grab some phone calls, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Becky, Lawton, Oklahoma. Becky, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Brian. Thank
Hi.
you for taking my call.
Yeah, you bet.
Appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Wanted to talk about the Second Amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to verbalize my frustration that I get with politicians and whoever's talking about it generally, because they keep letting the liberals have their talking points. They keep letting it be about gun violence and all of this, and how we don't really need guns to protect ourselves. And that's, as you have stated on your program and others, that's not why we have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is there for the purposes of tyranny. And I would like to just suggest maybe that people, when they're talking about these things, that they refer to it as invasion. It's there to protect us from invasion, either foreign or domestic.
Mm-hmm.
Pick your foe.
Yeah.
And if we can keep it focused on that, and that is the primary reason for our Second Amendment, then maybe we'll have more success in converting people's thoughts about it. That's all I have to say. I'll hang up and listen to your comments. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Becky. I appreciate that very much. And, you know, Becky's right. And I've read you the quote from Thomas Jefferson numerous times that the purpose of the Second Amendment is for the people of the American states to be able to protect themselves against tyranny. It was about tyranny. It wasn't about self-defense. It wasn't about recreation. It wasn't about hunting. It was to protect us against tyranny. And I mentioned this before, but you look at the very wording of the Second Amendment. Says this: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is about the security of a free state with a capital S. Each one of the 13 states were saying, look, we want to make sure that we have the capacity to defend ourselves against tyranny. The way we do that is we make sure that the American people have the right to keep and bear arms, because we need each state to be able to protect itself against tyranny. Well, where would the tyranny come from in the minds of the founders? Well, one of the places it could come from would be an overarching central government. And they said, look, we want the American people to be armed, to keep and bear arms, so that if the government that the states have created begins to act tyrannically toward them, they will be able to protect their security and their freedom. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.